Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to our Teach Abroad 101, How to Find the Perfect Teaching Job. First of all, I wanted to thank you all for joining us today. The purpose of this webinar is to provide you with as much useful information as possible so you can be completely prepared in your search for a teaching job abroad. We're going to share with you the tips, tricks, and inspiration you need to get that job application right, plus comprehensive job guides covering most of our current teaching positions. Today's host, you have myself, Al Darlington. Later on, we'll be joined by Ren Frey and Rebecca Young. Now, before diving into the main body of today's webinar, I thought you may be interested to hear a little bit about how teaching abroad has impacted me both personally and professionally. After I graduated, I immediately began studying for a TEFL certificate with the goal of heading to Korea to teach ESL to students out there. During my time there, I worked for the Korean EPIC program, and as a result was able to travel through Asia extensively. After that, I also headed to Beijing, where I worked out of Renmin University, delivering courses in research methods. Today, we will be covering what is Teach Away, why teach abroad, finding the right job for you, registration and interview tips, checking your application status, what you need to know about TEFL. We'll finish with a live Q&A. I'd now like to pass over to Ren Frey to talk about Teach Away.
Hey, everybody. I'm hoping you can hear me. We're really passionate about Teach Away and the different things we've done and the places we've worked. So for the last 15 years, we've been connecting educators to the best jobs around the world. The Teach Away staff, as you can see in this picture, are probably the coolest people in the world that you'll ever meet. If you wanted to spend some time over a drink or a dinner with the most interesting people in the room, each person in that picture would likely qualify as the most interesting person in the room. Our mission is to have every student experience the power of a great teacher. And so in order to do that, we've been working with incredible educators such as yourselves or individuals who are not yet educators, moving them around the world, supporting global initiatives to try and make a positive change in the world. So why might one want to teach abroad? Many of these things you could ask yourself and you can get the answer to. But I'm going to tell you anyways, some of the things that we like to think about as benefits to teaching abroad. A really awesome one is you get paid to see the world. Most people pay for travel, pay for vacations, pay to neat things. Imagine you could go experience something, immerse yourself in a culture, learn a new language, eat in a different place every evening, travel to new countries, and all the while get paid. That's one of the great things about teaching abroad. You get to immerse yourself in a new culture. You're not a tourist for a week or even a month. At minimum, usually you're there a year, and many of the people that we've worked with end up overseas for 7, 10 years, moving from country to country, or staying where they started. It's an incredible opportunity to expand your personal horizons, expand your networks, so that by the time you're finished this journey, a lot of times you can go anywhere in the world, and you say, oh, I have a friend who lives there, and you drop in and you stay with them. You get to, oh, the things, can you go back? All right, awesome. You get to gain international experience, obviously. You get an opportunity to create impact and change students' lives. Career progression. Career progression can mean many things. If you're looking to become a teacher, you get the opportunity as a new grad or a TEFL teacher to get your first teaching job. If you're already a qualified teacher, you get the opportunity to take on a new role, see a new part of the world. International education is growing massively at 25% a year. So there's new jobs that are always popping up in international education. And finally, when you decide, and if you decide to come back home, you have the opportunity to put experiences on your CV that nobody else looking for the jobs you're looking for can do. You have experience immersing yourself and understanding other cultures, and it's really valuable in a global economy and a global education community when you come home. And most importantly, you get to be more interesting than your friends. So what type of opportunities are available? Here we've listed out some of the places and some of the types of jobs that are available. And we've also talked about what kind of jobs are available to each type of person. And when we talk about a type of person, we're talking about, you know, your educational background, your experience level, and what you're hoping to accomplish. So when we think about a recent graduate, that'd be somebody who's just coming out of university. They've had an amazing 3 or 4 years. They've been meeting new people, trying new things, and they're looking for their first or second job coming out of school. They're not a qualified teacher yet, and they don't have a TEFL or TESL certificate. So this, you know, what might be available to you? Well, you can do online teaching. There's huge opportunities available for that all over the world, whether you do that to students in China or to students in Japan or to students locally. We've got opportunities for each of those if you wanted to stay home. Now that's not as exciting as going overseas. So there's opportunities for people to teach in Japan. There's also an opportunity with the UAE government schools, specifically in Dubai, where you can go as a graduate, do a 1-year internship, get a UAE teaching license, and actually teach in the public schools for up to 3 years, which gets you a teaching license that allows you to teach your teachable subject in government schools in the UAE. I've personally been to the UAE over 50 times. It's a beautiful country. It's fascinating. Everybody's heard of Dubai, but there's lots of other interesting things to see there. And there's an opportunity. It's about $300 to fly to Thailand. They don't call it the Middle East for no reason. It's right in the middle of the world. So from there, you can kick off to just about anywhere, whether it's India, you know, Istanbul for a weekend, or Eid. There's plenty of opportunities for people to move around from there. For ESL or TEFL teachers, there's huge opportunities globally. The one that we've listed on here, specifically in terms of country, is China. We have placements available in both after-school tutoring facilities for ESL teachers for all ages, as well as in public schools throughout China. But we've tried to focus mostly on tier 1 cities in that people are a little bit more comfortable in that travel to China that way. So Beijing, Shenzhen, Shanghai, and a number of other places. So there's the actual growth of what's happening in China is incredible. I was in Beijing just earlier this year, and it's just shocking and amazing what's happening there. For a newly qualified teacher, newly certified, so for a teacher who might have just finished a Bachelor of Education or got their teaching license, but they don't have a ton of experience. There's a number of neat opportunities we have working with the UK Department of Education, where you can go and you can teach in the public schools in the UK. So that could be in London, but it could be in also cities in the countryside or towns in the countryside. And we have contracts with the government there, the Department of Education, to facilitate placements for new grads all over the country. For experienced teachers, there's possibilities globally. A couple that we've highlighted here are with the government in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, but there's also international school placements that we do with American international schools and British international schools in places, you know, there's over 250 of those also. For school administrators, we work with international schools around the world, as well as government programs, so that, you know, the opportunities, we've just kind of chosen a cross section here of what's possible, but the number of positions and the possibilities are close to endless when we talk about what types of opportunities are available and where and what that might look like for you. So it's really exciting, and yeah.
All right, thanks so much, Rennie, for that one. So we're now going to move on to registration and job application process. My name's Rebecca, but before I get started on this part of the webinar, I wanted to just make sure everyone knew that they could go on to the chat function or the questions function of the webinar. We've got a lot of great people online at the moment ready to answer your questions if we're not covering anything as we talk. So feel free to ask questions or speak in the chat to anybody and they'll get back to you right away. So we're going to look more into the registration and job application process now. This is a really broad overview of what teaching abroad looks like with TeachAway. So simply complete your profile and apply, interview, accept an offer, get a visa and pack your bags. It's a very broad overview. And we're going to break it down a little bit in terms of things that we can really help you with here at TeachAway. So first of all, we've got tips on completing your profile. So on your TeachAway dashboard, you have all probably logged in, you've filled out your registration and filled out your degrees, your certificates, your experience, but some really good things to do on your profile to get noticed by schools and to just make sure you present yourself as best as possible is to go in there and just check to make sure you've completed your profile to 100%. So a lot of teachers we find have only completed the basic needed, and that's okay, but a lot of schools are looking for that extra little bit from teachers. So what I would suggest is you go in and you complete it to 100%, making sure everything's filled in. Another good thing to do is to make sure your resume is up to date. We do have a lot of resumes from teachers that are about 2 years old, so we don't have your up-to-date experience, and neither does the school. So there's a question mark already when they review your profile. So go in there and just check your resume is up to date. Make sure that your latest position, the school that you're at, or the university degree that you've just completed, or the certificate that you just got is on your resume, and then re-upload that resume to your profile again. Another really good thing to do is to upload a professional photo of yourself. So go into your dashboard and just check that profile. We really strongly recommend no selfies, no fun photos. It's great to do a fun photo, but it needs to be professional at the same time. That's the first, one of the first things that a school sees with your degrees and your experience and your certification. So you want to make sure that you present yourself in the best light, in the best possible way that you can. Another really good thing to do, as I said, with the resume is to also make sure you add in on your profile all the certificates that you have and all of the degrees that you have. We find a lot of teachers have done their bachelor degree, but then they also did a TEFL certification, or they did a professional development course and they got a certificate for behavior management or technology within the classroom, but they've not uploaded that certificate. So these are all really good things that schools love to see, and it's something that we see a lot of teachers don't do. So I would suggest you go in and add those ones as well. Another really good tip for your profile is to go in and check and see if your referees in the reference section have filled in a reference for you. And you can simply see that on your dashboard where you've entered in the referee's name. It'll say pending or completed. So if it says pending, that means they haven't completed it yet for you. So I would suggest that you contact that person, give them a call, and just say they've received an email from TeachAway to complete a confidential reference for you, and encourage them to complete that, because that's something that schools definitely want to see is completed as well when they're looking at your profile. The last major thing that I would suggest that everybody do is check your profile on your TeachAway dashboard for typos. Make sure everything is filled in correctly, and make sure there's no duplications of degrees. Make sure the dates that you completed them are correct, and just do a once final review of that profile, and then you know you're ready to go. Another great resource though is our blog on our TeachAway website. It's a great resource for looking at additional tips to making your profile just that little bit better and making it stand out amongst everybody else. Next thing to go through is some interview tips that we at TeachAway think will help you get that job, that right job that you're looking for, whether it's in China or Abu Dhabi or in Dubai or in Korea. These are tips that our recruitment team here at TeachAway has kind of collated, and these are the 5 top things that they suggest that candidates do when you're going to get ready for an interview with a school. So we suggest you research the school. Find out when it started, what the curriculum is, the resources it has, the campus, research into anything about that school just to help you prepare so that when they talk to you about the school, you can ask questions back, and it presents really well to a school when you come informed to an interview. And research about the position you're applying for. If it requires certain curriculum experience, if it requires certain technology experience, or maybe it requires you to to work with children that are younger than what you're used to. Research this and be ready to talk about that and answer questions about that, and also ask questions about that, because it's as well making sure it's the right position for you. Another interview tip is to talk about what you do, not what you've studied. So talk about the experience that you have in the classroom, or talk about the experience that you had completing that TEFL certification. Talk about why you're wanting to teach abroad. Not only talking about what you've studied and what you've learned in the classroom, but talking more about you as a teacher or as a new graduate, and why you're wanting to teach abroad and what you're looking to get out of it. Another really good tip is to be brief, but personal, and tell personal anecdotes. We do find in interviews, and this is feedback from schools as well, that candidates do tend to go on and on about different stories to do with when they were completing their degree, or an assignment at school, or a student in a classroom. So these are great anecdotes to have, but do be brief but personal at the same time. Another really good tip is, let's say you didn't get that interview, that job that you interviewed for that you were really excited about. This does happen for any career, so something to take into account is to just not shy away from a little self-reflection. So reflect on what you did well in an interview, what you could have done better, and to make improvements for the next interview that you have. And that ties into the last point, which is be willing to accept feedback. So schools are really good sometimes about giving feedback on why you didn't get a position. If you're not ready for it this year, maybe you'll be ready for it next year with a little bit more experience. So be willing to accept that feedback and get ready for a role that's definitely suited for you. Last thing to go through is your application status on your dashboard. So we get a lot of questions from teachers about what stage their application is at, because we know that you apply for a lot of jobs. We know that you really want to get that job. So a really good way to check the status of your application is log into your TeacherWay dashboard. On your dashboard, you'll see all of the jobs that you've applied for. It only lists a few, so do click into viewing all of those jobs. And then beside each job, there's a status little icon that tells you if it's been submitted, or if it's been unfortunately denied, or if you're in an interview, or if you've received an offer. So that status will update. But something to keep in mind, that if it's a direct to school job, and it will be grouped as a direct to school job on that dashboard for you, that application status just says submitted. And the school will have reached out to you directly to either move forward with your application, or to unfortunately tell you that the position is filled. So that's a really good way to tell if your application status has been updated. And now I'm going to hand it back to Rennie Free to talk about TEFL.
Hey everybody, I'm sure you missed me. So here I am, I'm back. What we're hoping to do now is tell you a little bit about TEFL, Teaching English as a Foreign Language, the certificate we've created with the University of Toronto, why one might want to do it, and some specifics about the course itself. In addition, I'm going to try and get into some of the questions that you guys have asked before the end of this thing, to see if we can't address them while I'm still talking. I know we have people typing answers to questions and that sort of thing, but if there's a group of questions that people want me to answer, that's what we'll do before we finish it off. So what is TEFL? TEFL stands for Teaching English as a Foreign Language. It's really valuable to give you the skills required to become a successful English language teacher. And for many people, this is the first step in teaching abroad. There's a few reasons for that. Oh, okay. So a few reasons for that. One of them would be some countries, it's a visa requirement. So if you're a new grad and a native English speaker and you're looking to go teach abroad, many countries will still require you to have a TEFL certificate. Another reason is it differentiates you when you're actually applying. So if it's not a requirement, it shows commitment. It shows that you've done some learning about what the job would be. And it'll probably give you, well, not probably, it will give you a solid base to begin your teaching career from. So some of the common misconceptions is if you can speak English, you can teach English. I speak English reasonably well. In terms of teaching English, I would struggle with a lot of the grammar requirements. And so I'm not going to get into the examples, but I am sure that I would be a terrible English teacher. I did used to teach business, which I was able to do reasonably well. A TEFL certificate would really help me. Another common misconception is the length of the course. There's a lot of different courses out there, ranging from 20 hours to 250 hours. And thinking about the length of the course, there's a few key things that you need to think about. One, if you're going to take a TEFL certificate, taking something less than 100 hours is typically not valuable, because places that do require it for visa purposes will require either 100 or 120 hours. So when looking at courses, I think you want to be careful about taking anything less than 100 hours, and many countries require 120 hours. Accreditation, people will talk about all kinds of different accreditation of the course. There isn't a global standard for TEFL. You really want to look at the quality of the provider, who's it being delivered by, and what you think you will get from it. So there are hundreds of alternatives if you look for TEFL courses. The reason we partnered with the University of Toronto is it's a top 20 university in the world, top 25 depending on the ranking that you look at. And in absence of a global standard for accreditation, we felt it was really important to go with a world-class standard for creation of education. And so that's why we partnered with a school like the University of Toronto rather than writing it ourselves. So that segues right into what is OISE, which is the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education. It's the teachers' college, essentially, at the University of Toronto. It's internationally recognized. This was developed by academic experts from the University of Toronto's Faculty of Education. Some of the neat things that we were able to do with them was to create a 100% online, self-paced course. We've had over 6,500 people go through this. You have up to a year to complete it. The average completion time is 2 to 3 months. The speediest completion, I think, is in about 3 weeks, 2.5, 3 weeks. And one of the things that we did based on our years of experience and experience placing over 15,000 educators overseas was started to build out specializations that could really impact what you would do in a classroom. So if you are going to an after-school program that works with adults, you realize, or not after school, an ESL program that worked with adults, you realize that teaching business English was going to be really important. And if you're going to China, teaching English to Mandarin speakers was going to be really important. But if you're going to Korea, teaching English to Korean speakers would be important. And if you're working with early childhood or young learners, well, teaching English to young learners is going to be important. So we created 9 specializations that allows you to mass customize your experience to exactly what you're hoping to get from the course and from the experience you're going overseas for. So as you can see, there's 3 different levels of course. There's 100, 120, and 150 hour course. When you look at the 100-hour course, it's a standard course of study. The 120-hour course allows for 2 specializations, and the 150-hour course allows for 2 specializations plus additional learning. For China or Korea, you need a 120-hour course. And so if you're looking for a visa for either of those countries, you'd want to focus on taking at least the 120 hours. In that, it allows you to forego the experience requirements in terms of getting a Z visa in China. And it also allows you to get those specializations. So when you think about what you want your journey, your life to look like, your impact to be, you can choose some training that's going to allow you to do that better. So how could you benefit from a TEFL? It allows people with no teaching experience to be able to look for work. for experienced teachers to sharpen their teaching skills for a foreign classroom, and for licensed teachers with no experience teaching non-native English speakers. We've had 700 qualified teachers probably go through this program, and every single one has said they'd recommend it to a friend or colleague. In fact, 95% of the people that have gone through this program would recommend it to a friend or colleague. And the benefit is that it allows you to sharpen your skills. One of the comments I remember reading about 2 years ago was that this was like a mini teacher's college and a perfect refresher on teaching in general, but also teaching to non-native speakers of English, because it's different than the experiences qualified teachers have had at home. So the question, one of the main questions that was coming up, do I need a TEFL certificate if I'm a qualified teacher? You don't need a TEFL certificate if you're a qualified teacher. Some people have found it very beneficial in terms of being a qualified teacher to get, because the experience is a little bit different. Many qualified teachers have ESL training as part of their training to become a teacher. For example, in California, you have CLAD. In Arizona, you'd have structured English immersion. In Ontario, people may take an AQ and ESL. And in the UK, there is some additional training that you can do around that. It is beneficial when you look at the application. Many times people will recognize that, you know what, because the number of second language learners you're teaching, seeing that commitment is beneficial, but it is not necessary in most cases. I've got another question that says, hey guys, I've done a TESOL certificate is equivalent to a TEFL certificate. The answer to that would be, it depends. Where'd you do it? How long was it? Is it sufficient for a visa overseas? That sort of thing. So it's, in terms of that kind of a general question, it's hard for me to answer right off the top of my head. Is it difficult for a special education teacher with years experience but no bachelor's degree? It can be difficult for spec ed teachers if you don't have a BA or a BEd or a bachelor's degree of any sort. It's not to say that it's impossible, but many countries have, as part of their visa requirements, a minimum of a bachelor's degree. So even though there are special education positions, without a bachelor's degree, that can become difficult. Not to say impossible, but it's really going to depend on the visa requirement for the country and the school. Okay, if you have a teaching certificate, let me read this question. Sorry, guys. If you have teaching experience but not a teaching certificate, can you get a TEFL certification in lieu of having a teaching certification? A TEFL certification is not a substitute for a teaching license. What it does is it may qualify you for positions that you would be unqualified for even with your experience. A teaching license is usually issued by a state, province, or federal government that gives you the ability to teach in public schools in your home country. Whereas a TEFL certification is something that will qualify you for certain visas overseas, but will rarely qualify you to teach in a public school in your own country. So hopefully I've answered that clearly. The Explorer program is for teaching in China. There are other programs that are for ESL and EFL teachers, but the Explorer program is specifically focused on teaching in China. I think I've answered most of the questions that we've seen. The teleprompter is giving me a thumbs up. That's Rebecca. And the one thing that I guess I'll finish on is we really appreciate you guys taking time out of your busy schedules. I know that your time is extremely valuable, and we appreciate you giving it to us. Hopefully this was informative, and feel free to reach out afterwards if you have any questions. Also, because you've given us that time, we wanted to give you a coupon that allows you to save on TEFL. So for those of you where it does apply, on 120 and 150 hour courses, Passport 18 will be the coupon code, and you save $200 on it. So again, thank you very much, everybody who took the time out of their schedule to come here tonight. And I'm going to pass it over to Rachel, my colleague, to close it up tonight. But thank you again.
Hi, everyone. So like as Rennie said, thanks for joining us today. Definitely appreciate your time. So on top of the TEFL coupon, and if you you do want some more information about teaching abroad and kind of just the ins and outs of how it all works in a little more in depth in some kind of specific areas like contracts, how to apply, kind of creating your profile. We have filmed some more content and developed a little more in-depth info for you guys. So we'll be sending that on to everyone that has signed up for this webinar, as well as the webinar recording, so you can kind of go back and see anything you might have missed. And yeah, as I said, there's 3 more videos coming at you this week, and lots of great kind of curated content, kind of specific to your qualifications. So yeah, we'll wrap that up for today, and thanks for joining us.